Hello, and welcome to the second unit of the course Pursuing a Career in Data Science and AI. My name is Ali. We have 5 units in the course. We've already done Unit 1, in which we had 5 different lectures, multiple videos, focusing on fundamental definitions, where we delineated the basic concepts in the field and discipline. We looked at data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and we did a comprehensive business perspective on AI goals and AI adoption. Now we'll be looking at Unit 2, where we'll be focusing on differentiating roles in AI. We have the same number of lectures in this unit as well. We'll take the business perspective forward to really see how a data strategy and AI strategy are formulated and executed. How do they lead to vacancies as the organizational structure is revamped and upgraded? Then we'll look at 5 roles in particular. Those 5 are on the screen in front of you now as well. We'll do a deep dive into each one of those in the next session. But today, let's continue. What do AI companies look for? And then we'll look at role types in the next one. We'll select one role, which, as you might know already, is the data scientist role for this course. And then we'll see how to prepare for the interview and what does it mean to really become a data scientist and how do you become one. So what do AI companies look for? We're looking here at the hype cycle for AI from 2023. But what is this hype cycle? Well, according to Gartner, there is this particular curve that you see in front of you. On the y-axis, there's expectations of technology, and the x-axis has time. And Gartner's researchers divide these into 5 different phases. So we have the innovation trigger as the first phase. Whenever a new innovation hits the market, it triggers some kind of a hype, a buildup of excitement. Think back to November a couple of years ago when ChatGPT was released by OpenAI, and the generative AI hype since then in the market. The second phase is then expectations overflow and they get inflated as everyone starts to consider this latest innovation or technology as the be-all and end-all. The third phase then is when the early adopters who have actually started adopting this innovation start to report back issues, challenges, perhaps low return on investment from these technologies. And this leads to a reduction in the hype and the excitement for that technology or innovation. And then the second last, the fourth, or the penultimate phase is where the initial benefits for the early adopters actually start to appear. And this leads to a more measured approach in the market towards adoption for others to follow their lead. At this point in time, of course, the hype is well and truly gone, and now the technology actually starts to get adopted by the mainstream. And the final stage, of course, the fifth phase or the last phase is when mainstream end users start to see benefits coming into the real world from this technology. This curve is created and updated every year. It's based on research and surveys and interviews with executives and leaders around the world. It's just one example of a hype curve that I've put in front of us just to have a reference point to see how the industry and the global market moves when new innovation is released. This is a good way to see what are the risks and opportunities of innovation. And in general, Gartner says that 3 to 5 years are required for a technology to move through this hype and get to the productivity plateau, which is the fifth phase, as you can see, if it makes there at all. So of course not every technology will make it through all of these phases. Some will just fizzle away and die down. So looking at the 2023 hype cycle or the curve, we can see that some innovation triggers were made by a number of things, including causal AI and composite AI and decision intelligence and prompt engineering, moving into the peak of inflated expectations where generative AI and foundation models were sitting in 2023. And I'm sure when we look at 2024, once it's out, we will see that these have been pushed forward either in the trough of disillusionment, as Gartner puts it, perhaps even a bit further into the slope of enlightenment as people start to adopt and see benefits and output coming from these technologies. But this remains to be seen. The premise or the basic idea of the innovation triggering hype and then the peak of inflated expectations remains the same every year. It's just that different innovations and technologies move through this cycle. And then we see that in 2023, Edge AI had already started to slump down with knowledge graphs and AI maker and teaching kits. Autonomous vehicles were moving into the slope of enlightenment. Cloud and AI services were already fairly on their way up, being adopted with data residency and new data centers being geographically and strategically opened, and many other factors that have led to adoption globally. And then we saw, of course, in 2023, according to Gartner, computer vision entering the plateau of productivity where it's becoming more and more mainstream so that end users start to see the benefits in real world. So what does this tell us? This tells us that there can be very many different types of companies and adopters out there. And of course, you can look at it in many ways, but I am dividing it into 3 different buckets here for ease of understanding. From the left-hand side then, we have AI producers. These are your pioneers, the top-tier companies that are producing products and services in AI, hyperscalers, AI startups, unicorns, etc. Even research and development institutes that are developing actual models, foundation models, perhaps in large language models, computer vision, or anything really. The second bucket is AI consumers. These are the companies that are actually customers of the AI producers. They might be taking, for instance, accelerators from hyperscalers and producing on the cloud some offerings that they are selling to other companies, and they're working business to business, so B2B model. And then the third bucket on the right hand is end users, and these are all companies that are just purely consuming AI products and services. So the AI producers are feeding into the AI consumers, the AI consumers are feeding into the end users, and of course the end users are directly, potentially, customers of AI producers as well. And let's just take this forward with us in the back of our minds that we have 3 different types of companies. You have the top tier AI producers. You have all of the other companies that are producing some kind of AI solutions and products using what's been produced by AI producers. And then you have the rest of the market, which is purely consuming AI. And you can have different roles in all of these companies. So now that we've seen the hype curve, we know that the market moves in a certain way, and as the market moves with the hype, there are roles that come up. For instance, prompt engineering. Let's do a quick recap of what we saw in the last video of Unit 1. Remember the AI goals. Any and all of these companies could have the same goals. They want to reduce costs and risks, improve revenue and growth, improve efficiencies, safety, performance, quality, ethical use, track the impact, assess risk of adoption. They might even want to monetize their data, etc. But regardless of whether you're an AI pioneer or a consumer/producer or an end user of AI, these goals remain paramount for a corporate organization. Even for a public department, some of these remain relevant: costs and risks, efficiency, safety, quality of life, performance, etc. Even if revenue and growth might not be their topmost priority because they are working in the benefit of the citizens and the greater good of the public. And then we saw the different types, as I've mentioned, public, private already, government departments versus more corporate organizations, and then a host of other examples that we saw in the last section or session of the previous unit. And if you recall, we had several different types of industries and domains as well. So public, private domain, and then different industries that pervade these two domains. Now, why are we looking at this and doing a recap? It's because we want to ensure that we remember what we discussed in the previous unit in the last video, as we will be building on top of that going forward in this section. So with AI goals, there were quite a few examples we gave under costs and risks and revenue and efficiency. We gave some overarching objectives for different types of businesses and what they're interested in when it comes to AI goals and adoption. And then we saw what industries' priorities were, for instance, typical benchmarks and use cases by industry and other organizations that are, or businesses that are trying to capitalize or leverage AI would be going into ideation and prototyping proof of concepts and minimum viable products. And the more mature ones, installing and embedding MLOps so that they can actually monitor and maintain their models in production. So let's look at this visually and do an illustration so that everything comes together. There are a number of industries, different types of organizations, flat, more traditional, hierarchical, deeper. They have AI goals. They want to adopt AI essentially for revenue and growth, etc. Remember the 7 facets from last unit as well. So for any organization to become AI ready, to be able to adopt AI, they need to align their policy, they need to update their strategy, organizational structure changes, new processes, updates to processes, future state architecture and upgrade to their infrastructure, data monetization, management, governance, ensuring their data is in the same place and ready for consumption by analytics and data science and AI, and then start developing the models and putting them in production, which again is in hand with the infrastructure upgrade, because they will need a continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, DevOps and MLOps. There's also cost, risk and value that they need to take into account at all times when they're adopting AI. So let's keep all of this in mind. Broadly, the industry hype, and as the industry starts to move and the market starts to move with new innovations and technologies, this is going to lead to hiring and new types of roles in the market. 2, the type of company there it might be, whether it's a pioneer or a consumer/producer, or whether it's an end user. There will be different types of roles for you in each of these different types of companies. And 3, that whenever within a specific industry, a specific type of organization is trying to adopt AI, they will need to go through this journey that is directed by these 7 facets. And this will lead to new roles as well that will come up and they will need to hire for. So here's the 4th thing that we need to look at when we're considering what are the different types of roles that might exist or come up in companies. We have the analytics maturity curve. Again, there are so many frameworks out there in literature and in industry, but I'm just giving a very generic example here. There's generally 5 stages of analytics maturity that we see typically. Let's say that the progress or maturity goes up to 100%. This is divided over 5 stages on the x-axis. That the first vertical phase is ad hoc analysis. The second one is where they might be doing descriptive analytics. Third one where they're doing diagnostic analytics. 4th, predictive. fifth, prescriptive, as we've seen this in the previous unit. I won't go into the definitions of each. And the final one, a new one, let's call it cognitive, because this is where the most advanced machine learning and deep learning, generative AI, and autonomous cars or something very advanced is happening. And not every company might even need to get to this stage. But let's say our hypothetical examples of these two companies started out at stage 1, level 0, business reporting. One of them moved faster into business intelligence, and using business intelligence went up to diagnostic because they were producing dashboards that were diagnosing problems as well as describing them, whereas the second company got to a stage of BI where they were having descriptive dashboards only. The third stage, where company 1 moved into predictive, but this was still ad hoc, so they maybe have 1 or 2 models in virtual machines or something, and they're doing ad hoc analysis in silos. This is not a centralized function yet. And at the same time, company 2, when they move into ad hoc analysis stage, they're still very much diagnostic and unable to move into predictive. Perhaps they don't have a data scientist yet. No budget approvals are there because they're not aware or perhaps not convinced that data science is the right direction for them. And then they go into data mining at this point in time, the fourth stage of analytics maturity in our generic sort of framework, is where they start to eventually make predictive models, some classifiers or regression models, let's say. And at this point in time, company 1 has already moved into prescriptive, where they're creating simulations and actually models are suggesting what actions could be taken to mitigate something that's being predicted ahead of time, for instance. And then both companies move into stage 5 a few years down the line, where they've got a full-fledged data science function with AI teams and different roles that have been hired, and they've got multiple models that are in production. They've got data engineers and security teams. They've got warehouses and lakes and different types of data systems that are supporting analytics and data science models in production, and making it a bit more concrete in terms of examples of what kind of analysis would be done in different phases and levels. So with business reporting, it might be file based and email based and siloed, and as the company, in this case, one example, company 1 moves up and becomes more mature analytically, they're doing reporting, exploration of data, and putting it in dashboards as part of BI, and moving into descriptive and diagnostic. When they come to ad hoc analysis, they're doing FORTIF analysis and root cause analysis. By the time they're moving towards data mining in the fourth stage, they're in predictive analytics level, doing regression and classification, perhaps even heuristics and rule-based simulations and prescriptive analytics, perhaps even a few models in virtual machines without a CI/CD or a pipeline in place, so they're managing it manually. And then finally they get to the final stage where they're developing in-house and deploying several models in production over a CI/CD pipeline, including perhaps even generative AI models and reinforcement learning, depending on the type of organization. So remember, as they go through these stages, let's bring back our 7 facets, right? They're going to be different things that are going to become active at different points in time. At this point in time, the companies might say that the data that they're picking is siloed and in Excel sheets and files and databases, and they need to bring it into the single source of truth and really capitalize on all of the data that's present across the business functions. Around stage 2, 2.5, moving towards stage 3, they might decide that they need special roles to be hired that will do this ad hoc analysis and do diagnostics, or perhaps even for predictive. When they're doing predictive ad hoc analysis, they might realize that they actually need a new process or some update to their existing processes so that the outcomes of these new solutions are actually used. Even if it's a dashboard or an Excel based output, they will still need some kind of a process update to be able to consume the output from this. Then by the time they get to data mining, they've got multiple models now running in VMs. It's becoming difficult for them to manage this, so they might need a technology upgrade so that they can actually maintain and manage these different models for data mining and data science and prescriptive and predictive analytics, so that it makes life easier and reduces the cost of managing and maintaining all of this analytics outcomes. And finally, AI, where all of these models are now being put on a CI/CD pipeline with the right kind of people in place, the technology in place, the processes upgraded and updated, and so on and so forth. You might notice that we are missing 2 of the 7 facets here. So, strategy is something that is going to take these companies through these various stages and bring all of these upgrades to them, their organization. So a strategy piece is something that is going to guide them through this journey. And the final one, policy, is something that is coming from up top, so everything has to be in line with that policy anyway. I've already said that businesses need to update their existing strategy set or complement it with the data and AI strategy. In any data and AI strategy formulation, we begin with a vision, and we want to see if there's an existing strategy that needs upgrading or alignment with, and we draw a roadmap. We need to look at data governance and management when it comes to data strategy. We look at people and process, as we've seen before, identify the key performance indicators and business metrics, upgrade the technology, the data architecture, and all of this in alignment with the business strategy. And of course, everything needs to be balanced in terms of cost and the risk and the value. So some more details on data strategy. It's a long-term plan defining people, process, technology, data management, analytics for informed decision making through usage and maintenance, collection, and sharing of data across the organization. So what we've seen in the previous slide, we essentially have objectives with the vision, strategy, and roadmap, policies, controls, and standards, data creation, sourcing, and storage, org structure, roles, and culture, tracking the impact and progress, and as well as use cases, data and technological architecture, as well as the data model, and all of these in a layered way, where we have at the bottom databases, unstructured data, and documents. Then on top we have the metadata for the data, we have the data architecture, data quality. We build on top the security and storage policies and controls, data modeling. So your conceptual, logical, physical data models, reference and master data, and then we're in a position to do business intelligence and warehousing. And once we've got all of these layers, then on top we can do the analytics and big data. So the data strategy ensures that all of these bits are put in place for an organization to maximally start consuming and monetizing and leveraging their data. The AI strategy then is a plan for AI adoption, of course, in an organization or by an organization, in a manner that it supports and enhances the wider ambitions and goals of the organization, whilst being in line with the data strategy and the overall vision and strategy. So with the vision for AI adoption, we look at the cost, risks, and value that we're bringing with the AI adoption. When it comes to cost, we're looking at costs of ownership, infrastructure, looking for return on investment as a value, experience enhancement, competitive advantage in the market, cost reductions, efficiencies, impact, positive impact on employee, positive impact on the users, Risks, we're looking at ethical and legal, AI bias and privacy, quality compliance risks, security, privacy, and other misuse of data. In terms of adoption, we're doing implementation, either outsourcing it or bringing in-house. These are decisions that need to be made, and that's what the AI strategy guides us to do. And then pilot projects on the use cases that have been selected as part of the strategic playbook, which have the major use cases, and then some quick wins to quickly bring to fruition outcomes and results and enable the organization to become more and more aligned with the adoption of AI. And of course, most importantly for us, the gaps in skills and talents, the training that existing and new staff need to be taken through, and the new staff that needs to be hired, most importantly. So the potential deliverables of these exercises to put in a data strategy and an AI strategy in an organization, of course, is the formulation of the strategy in the first instance. You can have the use case playbook that are benchmarked and globally adopted ones that have shown ROI and have a proven business case. Creating a business case and investment plan. Revise the operating model, so understand how the functions are going to work together, whether there will be a centralized analytics business function, whether there's a centralized data science and AI function, whether there's a center of excellence that lends its experts and resources to other business functions on project basis. This is all that is governed by operating models. An upgrade and update to the organization structure, future state data architecture, specification document, and a roadmap in various phases, let's say short term, mid term, and long term for AI adoption by the organization. And in the short term, some POCs for quick wins, even hopefully that can move into MVP and start to deliver results to the business. So some examples of what do companies look for from these deliverables. As a company is going through this journey, they might be looking for a business analyst or a user or a data analyst to focus on the use case playbook, or a data architect to focus on the future state architecture, or even data scientists and ML engineers and data engineers to develop the actual architecture, bring it to future state, and then start deploying POCs and MVPs on it for quick wins. The more mature organizations that are further ahead will be aware of the significance of CI/CD and MLOps, and at this point they might even be looking for the relevant roles there. But just to connect all of this to what we've seen in today's lecture, remember, companies are part of the hype that the market is leading. They'll jump on the bandwagon for new innovations and technologies, and roles will come into the market. For instance, prompt engineering is one example from recent times. You might have prompt engineers being sought after by organizations in the short term, but you need to see if this is a mid-term to long-term viable option for you as a career. The second thing we looked at was the type of company. So whether you want to go into an AI pioneer, a big top tier AI producing company, or a mid tier AI consumer / producer company, which is consuming products and services from the big companies and producing their own products that they're offering the market. Or the third type of company, which is completely an end user consumer company, where you are managing a certain product or just using an AI product for them. The third thing, of course, as we saw, was the journey, the strategy formulation and implementation that AI adopting companies go through. And the fourth thing and the final thing we saw was the analytics maturity curve as they go through the journey and across the stages of analytics maturity, the different types of activities that are that come up and the different types of roles that they need to hire. We'll continue this chain of thoughts in the next session. See you then.